Every single day, there is an attack on South Africa as well as the economic situation of South Africa. And the attack much stems from the fact that we have in South Africa a divide. There are, on the one side, parties who very much find themselves to be communists and socialists, like the EFF, the MK, and even the ANC to some extent, who firmly believe that the only way for South Africa and Africa to advance is by the government taking complete control of everything. Now, it should be mentioned in this that the African communist movement is very different to the theoretical communist movement proposed by Karl Marx, insofar as the African communist movement has no intention of giving the people control of anything, because from the African perspective, the people is the democratically elected government of the country. That's the people. And the people own all resources and the economy when the government owns all resources and the economy. Now, throughout history, we can go look at the separate countries that have tried to do this and have failed. A lot of people, proponents of communism, will point to China and say, well, look how amazing China is doing, completely ignoring the fact that in the early 90s, China went to Japan to find out how in the hell the Japanese are just continuously growing. At the time, China was little more than a fishing village, completely broken by communism. The Chinese saw what the Japanese were doing and said, hey, we can do that too. And so the Chinese actually became one of the most capitalistic nations on earth, with famously the leader then of the CCP saying, a cat is a cat regardless of the color. Basically saying, look, it doesn't matter how we get rich, as long as we get rich, whether that's through communism or capitalism, it does not matter. Then in 2008, with the financial crash, China got a little scared, and the then newly appointed Xi Jinping started to run things back towards communism. And year on year, we have seen the effects of that. The economic growth of China has been stable, or has been sort of stably declining. I say stably declining, which I know is a bit of a juxtaposition or an oxymoron, but it is stable, but it is declining. And in fact, there's a lot of economists that actually say if you remove the ghost growth of the Chinese economy, so the cities that China keeps building, if you remove that growth from the GDP, the Chinese economy is effectively in recession, or at least growing at a depressed rate, a massively depressed rate. So China isn't doing well, and it's directly related to its more communistic notions making its return. But then we can go look at just the body count that communist governments around the world has racked up. And these aren't body counts with wars waged against other nations. This is just communist governments killing their own people. Oh, Russia, Pol Pot, Cambodia's Idi Amin. Cambodia's Pol Pot, Uganda's Idi Amin. Was it Uganda? Yeah, I think it was Uganda. Idi Amin. Chairman Mao and the Red China. North Korea. You're talking about hundreds of millions of people dead, killed by their own governments due to starvation, because fundamentally, as most governments learn very quickly when they try to become communistic utopias, the government cannot effectively run an economy. It is simply impossible. Now, today's story, with that massive preamble out of the way, is MK. The MK party is once again at it. This isn't the first time the EFF has proposed a similar bill. The ANC has proposed bills that sort of skirt the lines of this, because while the ANC definitely wants to expropriate, and the ANC definitely wants custodianship of some land, it seems like the ANC isn't entirely in agreement on the idea that they should own all of the land, and there's a good reason for it. The ANC understands that right now, their position with the West, very specifically our trade positions as well as our economic positions, are very much reliant on at least the facade that private property is still being protected. Remember, the vast majority of corporations and companies in South Africa that allow this economy to continue to at least chug along are international. They're not local companies. Most of the companies that are started and run by South Africans are not situated here. Their head offices are not in South Africa, And so they can very easily close up shop and just leave. And if that were to happen, the South African economy would effectively go to null. And I understand that a big part of why that has not happened yet is because, to some extent, private property is at least still maintained, even though very, very contentiously so. But the MK party, nevertheless, has now proposed a new bill that has been gazetted where they are asking for the government to become the custodian of all property. The problem with the bill? Super vague, right? It says that the government controls all property. Then it says that some traditional leaders, as well as Khoisan leadership, will be able to run and administer some of the land. It has just the weirdest phrasing, because instead of the cutoff for people claiming land being 1913, they want to take it all the way back to 1652, which doesn't make any sense why that would even be in the bill, considering that the bill wants to make all land state owned anyways. But hey, fundamentally what this is, I think, is them going. So I'll just read through it and then we'll get into that, right? So it intends to insert the following into the constitution. Land and natural resources in the republic belong to the people of South Africa collectively. So in other words, the government controls it. That means the people control it, because somehow the government and the people are the same thing. The custodianship of land, it should be noted that just over 50% of the entire population voted in the last election. So the people are not the government. The majority of people do not support the ANC, the MK, the EFF, the DA, or anyone else. The GNU does not have a majority of the republic. It stands to reason that most people who don't vote because there's no parties that they align with, that they see themselves in. And so they wouldn't vote for anyone anyway. So at best, what these governments can say is that they're minority parties ruling in some minor way. I think this already just shoots it completely in the foot. But anyways, the custodianship of land and natural resources vests in the democratic state on behalf of the people and may be exercised where applicable in partnership with recognized traditional and Khoisan leadership structures in accordance with the constitution and national legislation. Thus, no private ownership. Now, the one thing that is good about this is that it needs 2/3 majority to pass. And even if the EFF and the ANC were to get fully all of the votes, right? And they were able to get all of the Progressive Caucus, they would still be about 6 votes shy of actually being the custodians of all land in the country. It's close. I mean, 6, you could probably turn that around, right? According to, of course, News 24, they say we don't have to worry about this at all. It just wouldn't happen. So, for example, they break it down here. Even with the support of the ANC and the rest of the so-called Progressive Caucus, the EFF, ATM, NCC, UAT, and the MK party would fall 6 votes short of the 267 required to amend the constitution. But now the problem there is the PA could probably be convinced, right? We've seen the PA flip-flop all over the place. You could probably even get some people in the DA to vote on your behalf. 6 votes is super close. Super close. And the only thing we can hope for is that there's still some factions in the ANC that has not completely lost their minds. The truth is, this would be devastating for our country. We cannot afford to have this happen, because overnight we will see a bunch of companies close up shop and leave. They'll be like, oh, well, this was a fun time. We're going to leave now. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll do something else. Maybe we'll do something somewhere else. And South Africa will just join the rest of Africa to become a literal hellhole, with every single state failing in a process of failing or completely failed already. Africa truly is one of the saddest stories in this world, because it is a continent perpetually running it back with communism and dictatorships, and yet still has no idea how to blame itself for its own problems, instead going, well, it must be everyone else's fault. Even though most countries in Africa has been completely free of colonialism and control from Western states for a very long time. Zimbabwe famously chased out all of its European citizens, and still, almost 20 years later, it is broke, battered, bruised, and we're dealing with all the Zimbabweans coming here because there's just no future in their own country. But somehow they still find a way to blame Europe for all of their issues. That's just how we are in Africa. And sadly, it will continue to remain the case until Africans realize that they and they alone are to blame for their financial and their life positions. It has nothing to do with anyone else. There are plenty of countries throughout the world who, in very short spans of time, managed to get from complete and utter destruction after the world wars. For example, Germany was completely destroyed. It had nothing left. Japan, 2 nuclear bombs were dropped on it. And within a decade, both of those countries rebuilt and became powerhouses within their respective spheres. Even China managed to get themselves out of extreme poverty and destruction within a very short span of time. So, this idea that you 30 years on can still blame Europeans collectively for your mistakes is such an African idea. And sadly, it is what is holding you back. That's just how it is. But, anyways, let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about this. Are you afraid that this might actually pass? Do you think, nah, I'm not too worried, Akko. I think we'll be fine. I'd love to read your thoughts. As always, please remember, if you like what I do, if you think the content that I bring you is good, rational, honest, and you want more people to see it, consider hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and letting me know in the comment sections down below, because it does help. YouTube wants to see people who are engaged in the content. Then a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons, as well as the YouTube channel members. You guys make content like this possible. If you want to support me a little bit more directly, $3 a month over on Patreon gets you ad-free viewing of all of my content. Just hit the link in the description down below, or just hit the join button below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I'll see all of you in the next one. A peace.